Sinuk, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen.
Last weekend, Uganda's oil industry marked a major milestone when President Museveni and his Tanzanian counterpart Samia Suluhu Hassan and the Total CEO Patrick Poyane signed agreements which could potentially transform the country into a major crude producer and into the lofty middle-income economy if the funds are properly utilized. The agreements were signed 15 years after the country registered the first commercial discoveries. The Total CEO called the signing of pacts a historic milestone for the production work and export pipeline that will draw more than $10 billion of investment. Conversely, there are fears that the value of Uganda's oil reserves has already fallen by approximately 7% since 2013, according to Climate Policy Initiative (CPI), a London-based think tank. Market conditions for the global oil industry have changed so dramatically over the past 5 years that reserves of cheap oil may no longer be worth recovering unless the Ugandan government can strike a new deal with its foreign investors that may put the country's public finances under extreme pressure, read a report which was released on the 2nd December 2020. But government estimates that oil reserves can generate a windfall of $50 billion out of the 1.4 billion barrels of oil that can be recovered. With Uganda's GDP currently standing at $32 billion, if the oil reserves meet the projections, they will outstrip GDP and provide an impetus for economic growth and debt sustainability. In August 2020, Uganda ratified the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI. It is what the oil and gas industry observers believe is the safety net for accountability. EITI implementation will require Uganda to publicly disclose information such as production and sharing agreements, beneficial owners, revenue and payments, including payments related to the environment. These disclosures can in turn promote public oversight, build trust and improve the investment climate and strengthen tax collection. The EITI head of Secretariat, Gloria Mugambe, says by signing up to the EITI, Uganda's extractive sector will be managed according to the international best practice.
The Ugandan extractive sector is going to be managed according to international best practice. And that international best practice is documented in the EITI standard, which I'm sure you've seen. So in that standard, there is a set way in which you should manage your sector in the different thematic areas along the extractive value chain. So there's a way in which you should deal with your legal and regulatory framework, a way in which you should talk about your revenue collection and allocation, and a way in which you should talk about the impact that your extractive is having on the population.
Mugambe says the exercise is a voluntary peer review.
Other countries, we're all watching each other with all the other countries who are in the EITI club. And once we have presented our reports according to the criteria that are stated in the standard, we will be validated. It will be like an assessment. Has Uganda met the criteria as it's set out? Is what Uganda is saying in its report actually true? And then from that report comes recommendations. Where does Uganda fall short? You talked about the issue of PSS. Our PSS are not yet public, but we are going to work towards making them public because that's an EITI requirement.
One of the major safeguards in the EITI is the requirement to publish production sharing agreements.
This was the crisis of Congo, DRC. The multinational companies under concessioneering agreements owned the deposits. The government, full of thieves, would only say, "What are you giving us?" So they pass on crumbs falling off the high table to the stakeholders called government officials. The citizens forgotten. You can sing music, you can dance, you can do satire, and you can do prostitution. And what the Prime Minister of North Carolina was saying, you can do Juakali, really muscle power, not brain power. That was the old concessioneering arrangement. The new dispensation of production sharing agreements is saying the oil companies are contractors of government. So you are doing the job on our behalf.
Or PSS, which are yet to be disclosed in the public domain underpinning Uganda's opaque posture in regard to its contractual undertakings with behemoth oil firms. However, Julius Chiza, who's an associate professor of political economy and development at Makerere University, EITI, could turn into a superfluous ritual.
This is another ritualistic enterprise where reports are written and complaints are made, and then we come back the next year to say, by the way, we told you the other year that things are not going fine. So where are the enforcement mechanisms to ensure that we graduate from this culture of writing reports and making laws and making policies which sometimes are attractive but are not translated into deliverables?
I don't think it's ritualistic because I think it will having the information out there in black and white, I think will be a very good catalyst for debate. It will be information in the hands of the right people who can actually do something, and it will also be an opportunity for the public to know what is really happening in the sector.
But Winnie Ngabire, the executive director at Global Rights Alert, which is part of the multi-sector group, says accountability will not be enforced retrospectively.
So EITI addresses the issue there and then. You don't wait to get a report that will tell you that 5 years back, so much money was not paid, or that 5 years back, this much money was swindled. So you get to know this is what is happening, and then you address it there and then. The nature of the reporting is that you're going to be asked. In February, you found that a company X had not paid. This is June. Why have they not paid?
Ngabire profiles that timelines are important because it enforces community inclusiveness and public debate.
In the debate, but also you must show that you actually are addressing the community concerns. You must have evidence that the money reached, that a hospital was constructed, that a road was constructed, and then you can go on to another aspect. So
Manager argues that EITI will not only create a climate of accountability among its peer countries, but place partners involved in the oil projects under scrutiny.
The partners involved in the project, the oil projects, some of them are listed companies who are taken through a very, very thorough mechanism of transparency. So transparency on its own in terms of what's happening may not be a big constraint in this day and age of the communication age, where there is information flow that is quite fluid across the globe. And for companies that are listed, they face very, very tough regulators. For example, a company like Total would be subject to very strict disclosure laws, very strict anti-bribery, anti-corruption laws, and that creates comfort.
However, he says that attention ought to be paid into fostering accountability within the country's financial system. Accountability of revenues within the oil and gas sector has now been entirely squeaky clean. Between 2017 and 2019, with the blessing of Cabinet and Parliament, Finance Minister Matia Kasaija withdrew a total 770.3 billion Uganda shillings from the Petroleum Fund and channeled the money to the Consolidated Fund. These funds, appropriated by Parliament to the Treasury, was justified as spending pressures, which elicited questions about the statutory role of the Petroleum Fund. Although Kasaija and his team have for the last 3 financial years been relying on the Oil Fund to finance budget gaps, Section 59(3) of the Public Finance Management Act 2015, as amended, ring-fences oil revenues to financing infrastructure and development projects only. In particular, the Auditor General John Mwanga made it clear that the fund is not a medium-term expenditure framework for budget financing. In 2011, the country's reserves were critically depleted after government dipped into the central bank coffers to help fund $720 million worth of Russian fighter jets, resulting into the free fall of the shilling, which at one time earned a dismal accolade of the world's third worst performing currency.
And, different circumstances in the past where maybe the oil funds that were got from tax were not spent in certain sectors. maybe those lessons were learned because I do remember that is the period when we had the worst macroeconomic instability, when our reserves suddenly depleted, when we made some security-related investments that resulted in the net balance of our foreign reserves and cash reserves, foreign currency reserves, to be low, which then led the markets to take a run on and become speculative about our currency, and the governor had to come out very strongly. I think for me, that was the most risky time for us as a country.
However, Mayanja says there are enough safeguards to secure macroeconomic stability.
Given also that there is increased competition in the political space and also increased scrutiny from some of the countries that are our partners. As you know, Uganda is a country that has got development partners. Some of them have given us loans and some of them have given us grants. And some of them have very advanced mechanisms of monitoring our fiscal, and they also have mechanisms of engaging with us diplomatically to influence certain choices, because obviously they are investors within the economy. That is what gives me hope that the choices this time may be better because of a combination of that bad experience which we learned from.
Ngabire says financial prudence can only be anchored on community interface and transparency.
So of course I've talked about the inclusiveness of who is in the debate, but also you must show that you actually addressing the community concerns. You must have evidence that the money reached, that a hospital was constructed, that a road was constructed, and then you can go on to another aspect. So for me,
to support this. So with the EITI, it is possible to know who is employed where and what are they getting there. But also in terms of percentages, how women are employed, but also the youth and other categories of people. It is also an opportunity for us to know what government is expecting from, in terms of revenues, from the different projects that are there, and then us, the citizens, us, the civil society, can follow up how much money government has gotten, okay, and how it has been used.
we need to work on and include non-oil-based or non-mineral-based practitioners in, so that they are able to influence. It's a chain, so that money goes, the construction works are going on, the health services are being delivered, nurses are paid, teachers are paid. So it's a whole chain. The expectations from the country are enormous. EITI can only do so much, but how we are able to network and connect and collaborate with everyone else is going to be the game changer.
It will be swallowed by a bottomless pit of recurrent expenditure. Some bureaucrats in government, including the Secretary to the Treasury, Keith Mhakanizi, have often advocated for a lean government, but their views are not in tandem with politicians who are exponents of the creation of new administrative units for political expediency. Uganda must also ensure that other vital sectors like tourism and agriculture are not pushed to the back burners.